It's well known that Kentaro Miura drew inspiration from a wide array of sources. From Western media like Hellraiser, Conan the Barbarian, and Star Wars, to artistic giants like Gustave Doré, H.R. Geiger, and Bosch, to philosophical thinkers like Plato, Nietzsche, and Jung. In fact, Berserk is littered with so many references that I made a 2.5-hour iceberg video talking about all of them. There's been websites, Reddit articles, and even books dedicated to this very subject. It's absolutely mind-boggling how many sources of information that Kentaro Miura drew from to make this epic tale. And that's what makes it such an epic tale, because it has so many different cultural elements all blended into one perfect manga. But even though I have a vast knowledge on the subject, there's still material to this day that I'm finding that inspired Berserk in so many different ways. And I want to talk about the lesser known inspirations in this video. Some of the ones that I'm guessing that most of us don't know about. But when I point them out, you're gonna be like, how did I miss it? I mean, it was so obvious. And we're gonna kick things off with the 1987 thriller, The Hidden. Now this is a sci-fi thriller film that stars Kyle MacLachlan. And the basic story goes as follows. An alien parasite with the ability to possess human bodies goes on a violent crime spree in LA, committing dozens of murders and robberies. In pursuit of the extraterrestrial criminal is an FBI agent, and the local officer investigating the rash of violence. The city faces a brutal threat, like no other it has ever encountered. Now I want you to pay attention to that first statement, a parasite that has the ability to possess human bodies. Now what does that sound like in Berserk? It sounds like something the Count would do. In fact, it is something that he did to Zondark when he possessed his body and had him fight Guts. And when you look at this scene with this manga panel right here, I mean, it looks like Miura literally took this scene and said, yup, I like that. That's awesome. That's going in my manga. And I think that's absolutely amazing. I love that he takes these obscure movies that most of us haven't heard of, or it's been a while since we've watched them, and then we can go back and be like, oh yeah, that does match up pretty well. The next one comes from chapter 23. When Baskan is going to visit Genin, we notice a pair of statues. The one on the left here is a Hellenistic Dionysus statue. And when you take into account that Dionysus is the god of wine and pleasure, it sort of matches up well with Genin's character. But the next one we're going to talk about really hammers that point home. And that comes in chapter 25. This statue right here closely resembles the one of Pan and Daphnis. Now Daphnis is the son of Hermes and the nymph Daphne, which is really interesting because I've made a couple videos about how Griffith and Hermes have many parallels between each other. And in this scenario, Griffith is resembling Daphnis, because Daphnis embodies the ideal of the Eromenos, the child of unparalleled beauty, capable of fascinating every man or divinity, which is exactly what happens because Genin is so fascinated by him that he uses him for his own sexual pleasure. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Griffith resembles Daphnis in the sense that they're very beautiful and desirable, and Pan is kind of rough and rugged and animal-like, much like Genin. The next image we have here is called The Wild Hunt of Odin. It's a painting that depicts a terrifying procession that hurl across the sky during midwinter and abduct unfortunate people who have failed to find a hiding place. And this kind of mimics this image right here of the Skull Knight. He's a dark specter who hunts down apostles who haven't found a good hiding spot. The next one we have here is William Blake's The Great Red Dragon. And when you look at this panel right here from chapter 94, you're going to notice that this dog apostle looks very similar to this image. We then go to chapter 255. Now this obscure little building here in Virtanis, you're going to notice that it's very similar to the Palazzo Vecchio, which is the town hall of Florence, Italy. And then inside the Vandemine estate, we notice this statue right here of this man holding his hand up in the air. It actually looks very similar to a statue of Marcus Aurelius when he was riding his horse. In chapter 291, the pontiff imagines Griffith's coronation, which looks very similar to the coronation of Napoleon. And then we get to Falconia. Now when you look at this image right here, there's a lot going on. In fact, so much going on that it's really hard to identify every single little bit of information. So let's just take it one step at a time. Over here, we got a structure that looks very similar to Pompeii's theater. In its time, it sat roughly 5,000 spectators. And then over here, we got the Walhalla Memorial, which is a hall of fame that honors laudable and distinguished people in German history, such as politicians, scientists, and even artists. And then over here, we got a structure that looks very similar to the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. I know I'm probably pronouncing all these names wrong, so apologies in advance. Now this structure was such a triumph of human engineering that it was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by successive earthquakes from the 12th to 15th century. However, it was the last of the 6 destroyed wonders. And then right here we have the Roman pantheon, which is derived from the Greek word pan, meaning all, and theos, meaning gods. So in this sense, it was a temple for the Roman gods. And then over here, we got the Temple of Artemis, which was built to worship the Greek goddess of childbirth, hunting, and chastity. Over here, we got the Flavian Amphitheater, and then finally, we got St. Peter's Square. So you could definitely see that Miura was very inspired by Greco-Roman structures, and he invested a lot of time researching them to the point that he could integrate them seamlessly into the manga. Now in this panel right here, we're going to talk about some Jewish scripture. Now I'm by no means an expert in this stuff, so if I get some stuff wrong here, try to give me the benefit of the doubt, try my best. If you are looking for more information on this, by the way, Max Derritt made an excellent video covering this very subject. He went into very exhaustive detail, and it's very impressive what he came up with. So I highly recommend that. But if you look at this right here, Adonai means my great Lord. Now, even though Miura dabbled into Kabbalistic knowledge, it doesn't mean that it's 100% accurate. From what I've read online, he sort of uses it in his own way, puts a creative spin on it, and makes it his own. But it is still really fascinating that he uses a lot of the same symbols and words in the manga itself. Now, the next one we have here is the Mosque of Cordoba. It's one of Spain's major historic monuments, and it's truly a breathtaking sight. So breathtaking that Miura actually took this and used it for the battleground between Guts and Serpico. I mean, just look at how identical it is. It's absolutely remarkable. And then the next one we have here is Coca Castle. This is also located in Spain. It was constructed in the 15th century and is one of the best examples of Spanish brickwork which incorporates Moorish Muslim design and construction with Gothic architecture. And it seems to have played some inspiration in the design for Doldry Castle. Now, we all remember that scene in which Griffith is carrying the dead body of the child and looking up at his desired kingdom. Now, where did this kingdom come from? Did it just magically come to Miura's head, or did he use a castle as a reference? I believe this is based on Alcázar de Segovia. Now, this is another Spanish castle, and it has existed since the 12th century. In fact, it was so inspirational that Walt Disney used this as a basis for the Cinderella Castle at Walt Disney World. So the same castle that inspired Walt Disney inspired Miura decades later for Griffith's Dream Castle. Which is kind of funny in a way because if you think about it, Griffith's dream was sort of a fairy tale. It was something that wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to be king, he was born of common birth. So he had to create a fictionalized kingdom for himself to aspire to. And when you think about Disney World, it's not really a kingdom whatsoever. It's an illusory kingdom, it doesn't really exist. I think that goes hand in hand with Griffith's dream. It was this illusory vision that was out of reach to him. But he hung on to it nonetheless, hoping that one day that he could turn fiction into reality. But as we found out, reality is not so fanciful. The Name of the Rose is a 1986 historical mystery film that features Sean Connery as William of Bakersville. William is a friar who investigates a string of murders in a medieval abbey. To circumvent the accusations of a demonic possession, William and his apprentice, Adso, who is played by a young Christian Slater, investigate a labyrinth library in the abbey's forbidden principal tower. William's investigations are curtailed by the arrival of Bernardo Gui of the Inquisition. Now, a girl who had sex with Adso is eventually found to be in league with Satan and is condemned to burn at the stake. Overall, the film has very similar vibes and themes to the conviction arc of Berserk. In fact, an interview in the Berserk official guidebook confirms this. Mosgus, who was introduced around the time, is a visually interesting character. Does he hold any sentimental value to you? Miura responds with, first of all, the movie The Name of the Rose is the inspiration for the conviction arc. From there, I added the witch hunt, giving me the notion to depict the darker aspects of religion. But when I thought of a character who would be the overall embodiment of religious fundamentalism, I arrived at Mosgus. Doctrine comes first, and mankind comes after. Now, not to go into any specific details about the movie, but the various friars and inquisitor denounce pleasurable experiences, such as laughter, and they consider it a sin against God. Fear, as they claim, is what instills proper servitude. And this sounds much like Mosgus's disciples. How do they ensure loyalty to the Holy See? Through fear and punishment. Another interesting detail is that many of the friars are deformed in their appearance, and this seems to be a theme that Miura used when designing Mosgus and his various disciples, as they're all various rejects of society, and often have very deformed and weird appearances. As an aside, the woman who played the nameless girl who had sex with Adso is the same actress who played Angelique in Hellraiser, which, as most of us know, served as the inspiration for various members of the God Hand. But anyway, that's some of the obscure references for Berserk that most of us probably haven't heard about. If you've heard about any other things that inspired Berserk that I didn't reference in this video, please let me know in the comments. There's probably a high likelihood that I'll make a video about it in the future. But until next time guys, I'll catch you on the flip side.